Burkina Faso, a small West African nation, has become the epicenter of a collapsing region. European aid workers have been arrested for spying. The United States has suspended visa services after a diplomatic standoff. A new military alliance is forming to fight jihadist insurgents. Yet, almost no one is paying attention. 2 million people have been forced from their homes. Jihadist groups control large parts of the country. The government is isolated, desperate, and losing ground fast. This is Conflict Nexus Report, and today, we're breaking down what's really happening in Burkina Faso and why it matters. In October 2025, Burkina Faso's military government arrested several European aid workers, accusing them of espionage. Officials claimed that these workers, from France, Germany, and Belgium, were using humanitarian missions as a cover to collect intelligence and map military positions. European governments strongly deny the accusations, calling them baseless. Human rights organizations warn that this move could cripple humanitarian operations across the Sahel, where millions depend on international aid. Since coming to power in 2022, Burkina Faso's military rulers have turned sharply against Western influence. They expelled French troops, banned French media, and now, even humanitarian organizations face harassment and arrest. In their place, Russia has stepped in. The Wagner Group, now operating as the Africa Corps, provides weapons, training, and political backing with no questions about democracy or human rights. China has also expanded its presence, offering infrastructure projects and loans with no political conditions attached. But the consequences are devastating. Aid organizations are withdrawing their staff. Humanitarian work is shrinking. Millions are left without food, medical care, or education. And as the West retreats, the question remains, who will fill the gap? And can anyone truly replace them? Relations with the United States have also deteriorated. In late 2025, Washington suspended visa services for Burkina Faso after the country refused to take back its own citizens deported from the U.S. The move violated international agreements, and in response, the U.S. imposed visa restrictions on Burkinabe officials. But this standoff is more than a bureaucratic dispute. It symbolizes a deep diplomatic rift. As Burkina Faso draws closer to Russia and China, its ties with Western nations are collapsing. American aid has been frozen, military cooperation suspended, and intelligence sharing has stopped. For Burkina Faso's junta, that's a price they're willing to pay. They view Western aid as conditional and controlling. But turning to Russia and China may simply replace one form of dependence with another, one that offers money and weapons, but little concern for human rights or humanitarian relief. In the face of a growing jihadist threat, Burkina Faso joined Mali and Niger to form the Alliance of Sahel States in 2025, a new military pact designed to fight insurgents without Western involvement. The alliance aims to coordinate operations, share intelligence, and create rapid reaction forces, backed by Russian training and equipment. But in reality, these militaries are weak, underfunded, and plagued by corruption. They have limited capacity, low morale, and a history of human rights abuses. Meanwhile, jihadist groups linked to Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State continue expanding. Since the withdrawal of French forces in 2023, they've filled the power vacuum, launching more attacks and seizing more territory. The Sahel Alliance may sound ambitious, but so far, it's done little to change the situation on the ground. For civilians, life keeps getting worse. Behind the politics lies a staggering humanitarian disaster. More than 2 million people are displaced inside Burkina Faso. 4 million need urgent aid. 3 million face severe hunger. 6,000 schools have been shut down. Entire communities have been uprooted. Families live in overcrowded camps without clean water, sanitation, or healthcare. Diseases spread quickly. Children suffer from malnutrition. Women and girls face increased risk of violence. Now, with the arrests of aid workers, many organizations are pulling out, leaving the most vulnerable without help. Education is collapsing, with nearly 1 million children out of school. Food prices have skyrocketed, farmers can't farm, and local markets barely function. The healthcare system in rural areas has almost completely fallen apart. In the capital, Ouagadougou, displaced families crowd the streets, and city services are overwhelmed. Yet, the world barely notices. The crisis in Burkina Faso is one of the least funded humanitarian emergencies in the world, as international attention and resources focus on Ukraine and Gaza. For millions of Burkinabe, this lack of attention means life or death. So why does this matter? Because Burkina Faso's collapse won't stop at its borders. If this nation falls, instability will spread south into Benin, Togo, Ghana, and Côte d'Ivoire, creating a potential jihadist corridor from the Atlantic Ocean to the Red Sea. The region could become a new epicenter of global terrorism. It also matters for migration. As violence and poverty intensify, more people will risk their lives trying to reach Europe. And geopolitically, the decline of Western influence in Africa marks a historic shift. Russia and China now dominate the Sahel, reshaping alliances across the continent. The rise of military juntas is another concern. Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso, and Gabon are all now under military rule. The democratic progress of the 1990s has reversed, replaced by authoritarianism and repression. And finally, the arrest of aid workers as spies sets a dangerous precedent. If humanitarian work can be criminalized here, it can happen anywhere, putting millions more lives at risk. Burkina Faso's crisis is not just a national tragedy, it's a global warning. It represents the convergence of everything the modern world fears: jihadist insurgency, dictatorship, great power competition, and human suffering, all playing out in one forgotten country. So what happens next? Analysts see a few possible paths. The first, continued deterioration, where jihadists expand and the state eventually collapses entirely. The second, another military coup, reshuffling the leadership but changing nothing. The third, a potential regional conflict if ECOWAS or neighboring states intervene. And the fourth, localized peace deals between local leaders and militant groups, temporary truces to stop the violence. But the most likely outcome is a long, grinding stalemate. The government holds the cities, the jihadists rule the countryside, and civilians are trapped in between. The world will occasionally express concern, but little will change. Burkina Faso's crisis combines everything: insurgency, dictatorship, foreign power rivalry, and human tragedy. Yet, it barely makes the news. Because it's Africa. Because it's complicated. Because there are no easy solutions. But 2 million displaced people can't afford our silence. They're living the consequences of global neglect and state collapse. This is Conflict Nexus Report. If you want coverage of the wars the world ignores, subscribe and stay informed. Because someone has to tell these stories.